Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Contact Us. And this time, our guest is the man himself, the one running the LGT, Zach. Hello.
Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you're listening.
Yeah, great to have you on. And before we go in, a massive thank you to our sponsors, Weyland-Yutani and the Army Painter, as well as our community of Patreons and YouTube members. So, Zach, you've been running the LGT for quite a while now, along with a number of UKTC events. Is there still some excitement whenever a new LGT is around the corner, or is it business as usual by now?
No, actually, it's quite interesting because some years you go into it with almost like a sense of dread, and you can just tell it's going to be a hard year. This year we're like super on top of things, so actually, like all the anxiety of like, oh, we've got all this extra stuff to do is completely gone. So I'm really looking forward to it this year. We've got a great team. We've been really sort of building up the internal team over the course of the last year. So very excited. We've got lots of new things going on, not just massive tournament, but all the extra stuff we're doing this year. That's sort of nice to have. So business as usual in terms of running massive 40k events, but lots of new things as well.
So can you shed some light on some of the things that you've been doing to like improve the event? What's changing behind the scenes?
Yeah, so what we're trying to focus on at the moment is like more participatorial activities. So we've obviously had the raffle and these sort of like carnival games going on for a number of years now. But this year we've got basically what in theory could be like a Golden Demon competitor long term. Duncan Rhodes has basically launched his own high level painting competition, and the LGT is going to be the first one. So I think their plans are to do multiple, but obviously, there's more than one Golden Demon a year. There's going to be more than one of these. This will be the very first, and it's going to be all the glass cabinets, professional judging, and all that sort of stuff. So that's one thing. Anyone's free to enter. I think it's like £5 an entry or something that goes towards supporting Duncan's costs for coming, because they've got to rent all the glass cabinets and pay their staff and stuff. So that's super exciting. We're going to have the Titan Walk back again. So I think a lot of people sort of didn't see it last year. It was down one end, and if you don't go down that end, you kind of missed it. So all of these extra activities have been moved up the end, where it's sort of in between the 40k event and then the food and hospitality area. So more people will be able to interact with it. We've got a paint and take that's been also run by the people that produce the Two Thin Coats paint range. So anyone can just turn up and paint a model, try out those paints, and take it home. What else have we got? We got loads of demos this year, so you can demo the new Halo game that Mantic have been launching recently. We've got demos for Marvel Crisis Protocol. We've got demos for Shatterpoint. Again, the raffles are back. We've got even more carnival games this year. So we've got like a dwarf-themed axe throwing competition. We've got our usual orc shoot 'em up game. We've got a couple others as well, but there's lots of stuff to do. So that's really where our focus was this year. It was like, what can we do for people that makes it feel like they've always got something to do in between their games?
Okay, is the bolter not jamming anymore then?
The bolter does still jam, but that's part of the attraction. It's basically half the skill is not just aiming the bolter, but it's working out how to fire it.
All right. And speaking of all of this, do you actually get like a lot of participants in these side activities? Have you got any numbers? Well, not necessarily to share, but is that something worth pursuing?
Yeah, so it's sort of one of those things of we would do it even if it didn't, because the participatory numbers obviously don't reflect actual interest. So lots of people walk past the Titan Walk, for example, but they might not actually, tell us that it was one of the things they cared about, but they still get
It's great to pass by, though.
It's amazing. It's
really
one of the best things there, I think. It's great.
Makes an impression.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of these sorts of things are like them being there alone add value to the overall experience. What the numbers that we do have are obviously like related to like things like raffle ticket sales or like the Friday night side events. So like our Friday night side events, if they were a standalone event, would be a super major in themselves. Like we've got over 250 people just playing on the side events on Friday. Obviously, like you got 2,000 people in a building, like a lot of them are going to want to enter the raffle. The raffle's pricing is always amazing. I think last year we probably had about £6,000 worth of stuff we were giving away. So yeah, we've done them at like other super majors, and people don't really care. They just come in to compete, and they're there for the fun and the beers and the points. But at the LGT, people really do care about them. So it's great to see people like actually stopping by and buying a T-shirt or whatever.
Okay, and adding on the various activities as well as more gaming systems, etc., is it a goal of yours to turn the LGT into more of a convention rather than just a tournament event?
I think it's quite hard to do. I've got some exciting stuff to announce on that, hopefully before the end of the year. But the LGT itself is like a miniatures games focused event, right? We have run card games and things there before. But the convention type event are primarily based around like marketing budgets by games producers. And in the tabletop miniature gaming space, because of the market dominance by GW, who themselves don't have a huge marketing budget for things like event attendance, what we see is basically proliferation of lots of small companies that don't necessarily have enough money to support the fees required to make a massive convention happen. So when you compare things like the LGT to trade shows like UK Games Expo, which is board game focused, most board games are made by companies that are, number one, competing with one another, so they have big marketing budgets, but number two, are also have bigger marketing budgets just to begin with because they're mass market. So as a result, they're able to afford the big stands, get all the banners printed, all of that sort of stuff. So I think so long as the LGT stays a miniatures focused event, probably will always be a side activity in terms of the convention activities. But that's fine because the venue's full up. We would have to move venue, and having looked at all the opportunities around London, it wouldn't be possible to do. So the LGT would have to then change names, change branding, just to add on this sort of convention experience. So what's the alternative option? Just run another one, basically. So we are working on a very exciting project which has all of those convention experience activities that we've just been talking about. It won't just be focused on tabletop miniature gaming, and as a result, the business model will work, and it's going to be really cool. As I said, hoping to announce that before the end of the year. So people stay tuned, because if we can pull it off, it's going to be very, very interesting and lots of fun.
Okay, I managed to get a little bit of a spoiler out of you, so
yeah.
well done me.
Totally not ready to announce that yet. So.
All right, but focusing back on the LGT, what about the invitational? Because I think the formula is going to be yet again a little bit different than it was in the previous years. So 2 years ago, the first time I was at the event, you had a round of 16 essentially. Then last year it was like 3 pods of 8 people. What's it looking like this year?
Yeah, so we always try and mix it up a little bit, just because we don't want it to get stale. Basically, while 40K is getting bigger and bigger, we are seeing more and more of the name same faces or get invited to these things, because it's a combination of they have a media profile, and as a result of that are then playing 40K full time, and then because they're playing 40K full time, they're then winning more events, and sort of like a virtuous cycle for them. But so the people that are prolific become more prolific. So we wanted to shine a light on people that were different this year, and the format's been mixed up a bit to account for that. So what we're doing this year is an 8-round event, not an 8-round event, sorry, a 3-round event.
8-man event.
8 player, we should say.
Yeah.
And it's not a knockout this year, so all players will play the full 3 rounds.
Oh.
And the way we're doing it is we are taking the highest seed from each of the 8 most represented countries at the event. So each country obviously sends a number of people. We're picking supposedly the best player from each of those countries, and they'll be competing with what we're sort of terming like the national champion, or the weight of the nation is on their shoulders. It's their job to bring home the gold to their respective home countries. And what's quite interesting about it is because of how the UKTC rankings in the UK, but also the ITC rankings international, have been shaken up recently. The players that will be in attendance are maybe not stereotypical ones. So, if you were going to name the best players in the UK, you might name 5 names. I don't think maybe only one of those 5 might be playing in it. So it's going to be quite interesting. We're almost ready to start doing our sort of like esportsy player profile graphics, which will be coming up. One year we did top trumps style ones. So this year we're working on those too. But also I know that you are working on your own coverage of it. So anyone that's listening can obviously tune into that and hear a longer, sort of more in-depth chat with each of those players.
Yep, definitely. I recommend it. Obviously, it's on this channel, so make sure to tune into that. That will be coming up in the coming weeks before the LGT. Any particular reason to go in this direction rather than expand it like it was 24 people last year, grow out more?
Yeah, fundamentally, like it's more of like a respect for the players' experience, because I think lots of people say yes to the Invitational because it's quite exciting opportunity. It's always a fun event. It generates lots of buzz. But we've done it in the past where it's been 5 rounds, so 4 rounds on the Friday, and then 1 round on the Saturday evening after the main events. 3 rounds are finished. And I think that was the Malik won it. And so he played like 5 rounds of the Invitational, as well as winning the 7-round Super Major, which it was at the time. So over the course of the weekend, he played 12 rounds, and he was just absolutely burnt out. Not only that, but obviously, like, it would have affected his performance in the main event too. So now that the main event is the full 10 rounds, we can't realistically have a 5-round invitation or whatever as well. It'd just be too much to ask of people. So we wanted to keep the same sort of, excitement and engagement, have a reason to do it, and have a reason for having selected the certain people that we have, but reduce the number of rounds. So that's why we've gone for this. It's like, if we did 5 rounds, we'd need to find 32 different countries for people to represent. And while one year we did have, I think, 39 different countries turn up, over at least one player. This year, I think we're down a bit lower. We're about 20 something, and it didn't make tons of sense to try and make a 20-person format event make sense. So 8 worked well for like the players' experience, as well as like how do we make the format work for the strategic goals we're trying to use the Invitational for.
Yeah, and then also just well, it's a bit of a side event on the Friday at the end of the day, right? So, like you said, don't want to put too much strain on the players so they can be at their peak performance during the main event. Speaking of the main event, has anything changed in regards to that in terms of the formula?
Yeah, the main change is obviously terrains and mission, all that sort of stuff. The format is identical, so it's still 5 rounds for everyone. Anyone who's undefeated goes through to a 6th round, 7th round, 8th, 9th, 10th. The 7th round, so the last round on the Sunday, is the shadow round, because we'll end up just slightly below 1052. So not all of the finalists will be required to play that, but half of them will or whatever. But the overall change that people who haven't been to our last couple of UKTC Super Majors will be the terrain. We've added 2 new pieces of terrain that function quite differently to all of our others, and they have quite heavily impacted the meta in the UK. They've drastically reduced the prevalence of sort of shooting and staging as the primary 2 tactics in order to win in the missions, and it's made the whole scene quite dynamic, because the players that were grinding out reps on our old maps and layouts, mostly on TTS and these sorts of places, most of those people were on the WTC embargo. They weren't playing a lot over summer. So the players that won our Super Majors most recently with the new terrain sets, as well as the players who are going to have been practicing more, will generally be speaking not be one of the top 8 players in their country. So I think that change, combined with the WTC embargo, means that we may see a much more open field when it comes to the undefeated top 5.
Okay, so are you saying these new terrain pieces will debut now, or they debuted?
They were piloted at Sheffield, so that was about 2.5 months ago. And then they were tweaked a little bit, and then again we got more feedback from Leeds, which was about a month ago. So they're now basically set in stone, we'll be using them for the LGT 100%. And obviously we'll get tons and tons of feedback from the LGT. So what their place will be in the next UKTC season will obviously be pending that. Yeah, right. So it's the one at the bottom here. So quote new ruins, a very good bit of branding there from me. So obviously the large L shape is just a big line of sight blocking L. The medium one is a bit more dynamic because its footprint is really thin, and technically it has windows at the top level, but hardly anyone ever goes up a level anymore. The small one is, again, it's just another line of sight blocking out. And then the new ruins, so these are under 2 inches, so you can kind of move through them, which is obviously one of the big issues at the moment is if you block line of sight, you end up restricting movement for big units, and then the meta gets the board gets too full, and that impacts how useful things like Tesseract Arcs and blah blah blah. These new ruins are below 2 inches, so they don't affect that. But critically, they don't actually have any core line of sight blocking properties other than the rules for footprints and obscuring. So because they're quite long and thin, they're able to block quite a large firing lane while having minimal impact on the actual open space in the battlefield. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see how they're typically positioned. So they're the 2 central ones there. So they close off a lot of the line of sights, both diagonally, but also up and down from deployment zone to deployment zone. But they have minimal impact on moving units through those core sort of roadways. When you go down one more, they're very deliberately placed. This one is another one of our new terrain maps. So they're dovetailing with one of our small L's to create this new, quite interactive shape. Because
and there's no more shooting from one side of the board to the other.
Yeah, and part of that new L shape created in this map has hard line of sight blocking, so you can get tucked up right next to the edge of the wall, which is the top part of new L. But the bottom part, which is this new feature we've been talking about, is obviously more open. So as soon as you go onto it, you get shot and all that sort of stuff. So apologies for anyone who's just listening and not watching, but we're sort of scrolling through all the maps at the moment, and people can see how they're being used.
Yeah, at least for some of these, just for a bit of a preview and to get a better picture of it. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, you might want to actually put it up on YouTube as well to get the full picture of what's going on. Okay, well, that is interesting. So the terrain is evolving. The meta might not be as shooty as it has often been on UKTC. So is this change coming from feedback from some players about the terrain maps in general, or is it just like your initiative to shake things up a little bit?
It's a bit of both. So actually the primary feedback we get is not that people dislike the impact the terrain had on the meta. It's just we have such a prolific scene that players were feeding back that they were just a bit bored. They said no matter how good it is, if we're playing on it every single month for 3 years, we'd like something new. And the way the former set was set up, if we just tried to make radically new maps with the same pieces, they actually weren't different enough to be interesting. So we wanted to add something extra in. They were a little bit light. So I would say, if you've got 50, sort of 100 to 0 marker of really open to really dense, they were sort of hovering around sort of the 45 out of that 100. So they weren't 50, which would be perfect. They were just a little bit on the shooty side. Now I'd say they're probably about 55. I would say they're probably a little bit too dense now. But, people wanted a change. People got a change. We're very happy with how they are. The feedback has been really, really exciting, really, really positive. And a lot of people that, said at first, knee-jerk reaction, they're too dense. After playing a bit, actually realized that, well, this is all a matter of perspective and opinion. Like in the 41st millennium, so probably a gun should be better than a chainsaw anyway. So we should probably have more open maps anyway. But no, it's all based on player feedback. Players said they wanted something. We spent a long time trying to do it correctly, and this is what we've come up with. But we are always reviewing feedback. After the LGT is over, we're going to have had what I guess about 2,500 games played at the LGT. So there's going to be tons of feedback. Obviously, those games times 2, you're going to have 5,000 data points if every single person completes a feedback form for each round. So, if we can tweak something, even if it's only by rotating it half an inch, we always do so. And the people that looked at the maps earlier will notice that our large L shapes have rotated by about 10 degrees based on their usual orientation. And that's all based around explicit feedback we've got from some of the top players in the world about like, oh, well, in this mission, I would always deep strike here. I would come on from strategic reserves here, which creates this gap. And by placing a model exactly here, you prevent that. So from our sort of things, like if we can rotate a piece by an inch to radically impact how effective a very specific unit that's popping up in every single meta list is used, like a Colossus Assassin or something like that, we always take that into account. And I think that's really important to make sure the meta doesn't get stale.
No, 100%. Right. So you've mentioned the amount of games. So let's go to numbers a little bit. How many people have got a ticket at this moment? What are we looking at?
Well, I normally do my checkups at the weekend until we get very close to selling out. So my checkup as of last weekend put us at 850. So the most we've ever had turn up for day one playing, I think, was 798. So as soon as we go over that mark, my alarm bells start ringing. I'm like, okay, we'll probably need to start thinking about what our dropout rates are going to be and if we need new terrain and all that sort of stuff. So those that follow us on Facebook wouldn't have noticed that I went and picked up another pallet of terrain this week. We've got another 100 sets being built at the moment. So we have capacity, both in the venue and in terms of terrain, for up to 1,000 now. The most tickets we ever sold was 987. So that year we had a really high rate of dropouts of no-shows. The meta was a bit rubbish that year. Whereas last year when we sold slightly fewer tickets, but we had really, really low dropout rate. It was like less than 1% or something. So it all depends in terms of how many people will turn up for day one based on how healthy they think the game is. Personally, I think we're in a really good spot right now. So I'm expecting quite a low percentage. And we're also still 3 weeks from the event. So tomorrow is my checkup day. I expect it to be probably, again, another sort of 50-ish higher. So probably a shade below 900. And then again, that'll probably go up another 50 in the last week before registration starts. So, if we do have, 950 sales and we get like 10 no-shows or whatever, I believe, I'd have to double check because I don't have the figures in front of me, that would put us as the biggest event in the world, because as those that have been following LVO for the last couple of years have known, it's been declining in attendance. And I think this year they had sub 900. So if we get, I think, more than 900 turn up for day one, we will have finally taken the crown and brought that coveted sort of name and recognition to Europe. Obviously,
At
the
long
real
last.
long last. Yeah, it's only been like 10 years we've been chasing their tail, but what my ultimate goal is to be the first event ever with 1,000 active players. It's still possible for us to hit that goal this year. Obviously, if everyone listening to this goes and buys a ticket who hasn't got one, we'll not just hit that record, but we'll smash it. So I very much hope that is the case. But if it's not this year, it's we can sense it's coming down the pipeline. So maybe it's next, maybe it's the year after. But I do have confidence we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, but coming back to the venue topic, can the venue fit over 1,000 players? Is there still room to grow, or would that be like the cap? 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't host other game systems, then we can grow much larger. That's not going to be the case because we want to host other game systems, even though it would be easier to just put more 40k players in the room. We like the fact that it's sort of a hub for everyone. But we do have capacity to go over 1,000 at that current venue. We sold it out completely in 2022, I think, because we had about 500 card gamers turn up. This year we'll sell out again. I think there might be 30 spots left in the overall building. And it's all just about how we reallocate open spots to different events as and when we realize that some events are sort of slowing down sales and others aren't. So, we're going to be at that venue. The plan at the moment is to be at that venue again next year. I think we've still got at least a couple more years left there. Obviously, it's all pending feedback from this year and all that sort of stuff. But, we like it there. Most of our attendees seem to, on average, like it there as well. So,
out of curiosity, is the general ticket sales across all events, is that all like down to you, or do you delegate the non-40K stuff to other people, being a face of a TO, if you will?
Yeah, so it's a bit hit and miss. So some of them we do it in house because the TO just wants to turn up on a day and press buttons on BCP or whatever. Others the TO is very well known in the community, so it's better for them to be doing it, and they want to, and all that sort of stuff. So there's no one size fits all. Our preference is always to work with TOs that are community leaders. They're trying to do something great. That they're self-motivated and all that sort of stuff. So we would do less of that because it would be a bit weird for us to step on their feet. But some TOs are busy people. They would want to see an event exist, but they don't have the time day to day to promote it or whatever. So in those cases, yeah, we help them out a bit.
Okay, coming back to 40K, can we go through the deadlines for like list registration, that sort of stuff? Do you have them to hand?
I don't have them down, but I can pull them out. So our usual attendees will be used to what we basically do at all our events, apart from the LGT, where it's a 10-day registration process. So if the event begins on a Saturday, like most of them do, then on the Wednesday, the week before, they would get a email. And that would be registration open from the Wednesday until the Sunday night, which is when registration would close. And that's the list submission deadline. And then pairings and all that sort of stuff happen the week immediately preceding the event. Now, the LGT is a lot bigger than even our other super majors. And also like the overall attention it draws is obviously much larger. So there's people all around the world that want to make content about it and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of the time we try to give them more time to do so, as well as give players more time to sort of dig through all the lists and people to do stats analysis and all that sort of thing. So in the past, we have elongated our registration process by a few days. And I believe this year we have done something similar. I would need to check because obviously all these sorts of things are things that we think about, write down in the packs, and then sort of forget about because it's written down somewhere, and then we just keep.
That's what the pack is for, right?
Yeah, and it keeps us.
Nobody reads it is a different issue.
Yeah. So I'm just scrolling through, and I believe we have got it in our policies and procedures pack. So yeah, we've actually kept it as standard. So yeah, it's going to happen all exactly as per our normal super major procedures. So anyone who's a UKTC hardcore will just follow business as usual. But if anyone's listening to this that isn't, perhaps this is their first time playing at the LGT or one of our events. So all our documentation is on our uktc.events/40k. And that's where you can find the LGT tournament pack, but also the terrain and missions pack, and critically the policies and procedures pack. So the policies and procedures pack is the document I'm referring to here, and it has all the details for things like conversions, proxies, 3D prints, but registration, how we handle things like sportsmanship violations. And it's really like the customer-facing document tells you what to expect in terms of us officiating the event. So there's no surprises. We do it that way such that, when we're scaling up big events like this, we can advise our refs on how to basically do things consistently and to make sure that's fair for all attendees, regardless of how familiar they are with our events. Because, here's the document, it gets emailed to everyone. If you don't know it by heart already, you can always read it. So that's sort of why we do that there. That page is also really important because it has our judges' rulings. So we don't like to call them facts because sometimes they only get asked once, but they are important. So it's the judges' rulings prior to the event are linked to there, as well as the form to submit those. So we don't answer every single one we get. It's not a document to teach people how to play. It's a document to sort of fill in the gaps between the rulebook and GW's FAQs. But it's key that people do read it because particularly your audience that may be WTC focused will notice that we have a very different philosophy in terms of how we make rulings. And as a result, some key rulings are different.
Yep. Right. And I don't think you ever do that, but have you considered releasing like a list compilation of the event to the public eye? Because I think it's just on BCP, right? Whenever people submit lists.
Oh, we actually did do it. So I think we were famous one year. I think it was the year that went wrong back in 2018, where we had something like 600 lists, and I managed to get a list doc completely turned around and public within 24 hours. And that's back when it all used to be done manually and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we used to do that. It was a good opportunity to, promote our sponsors and supporters as well, because obviously that document would get tens of thousands of views. And we also used to use it as like a list checking process, so people could comment on it and spot mistakes. We don't do it anymore. Everything is on BCP, but we are typically a sponsored event on BCP, so people don't need an account to view the lists. Now, that's obviously a year-on-year negotiation that we have with them. Hopefully, we'll be able to agree it again this year. But I think it's BCP. It's not the app it used to be. It's very much a worthwhile addition to sort of any hobbyist's digital arsenal. So if people haven't got a subscription, then it's affordable. It's not an extortionate price, and obviously you get a ton of value by being able to follow all the lists and all that sort of stuff.
All right. Well, that's a little bit of free advertising right there.
Yeah.
Right. Zach, anything else you wanna mention?
No, I think that's probably it for now. What I would say is, obviously, we've spoken a lot today about the size and scale of the event, and the fact it is still growing. So if anyone wants to be a part of that, they can head over to lgtpresents.co.uk, and that's where they can get tickets. And obviously, that's where we also link to all our documentation stuff, which is on our other site, which is UKTC.events. So please do that. Also, I would encourage people to check out the live stream, which is going to be done by Joe from War Games Live. So if you can't come, then he will be broadcasting from the weekend. And of course, follow along the weekend. You guys will be doing some content for us as well throughout the course of the weekend, sort of chronicling different players' journeys as they go for gold. So yeah, please do get involved, whether that's digitally or physically, because we appreciate it.
All right, thanks. So we'll also put the link to the tickets in the video description below. So if you're considering and you have the capability to come to the OGT, just buy the ticket already. And we'll be wrapping up for today. Zach, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And obviously a massive thank you to our sponsors, Weyland-Yutani and the Army Painter, as well as our community of Patreons and YouTube members. If you like what we do, please hit subscribe, the bell button, consider becoming a patron and whatnot. And we will be seeing each other in London. So make sure you tune into the channel as well at that point in time to follow all the action from the OGT Live. Thanks everyone for today, and bye-bye.